Welcome, everyone. I'm Christiane Weeks Rogers on behalf of the American Craft Spirits Association and Craft Spirits Magazine. As we go along this session on top tasting rooms, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions, and the panelists will get to the questions near the end of the conversation, and we look forward to that. So thank you. So the top tasting rooms is a new list we released earlier this month through Craft Spirits Magazine. The top tasting rooms were chosen through a comprehensive review of each nomination's design, atmosphere, and community impact. Evaluators looked at when the space opened, how the layout functions for guests and staff, and how well the design and ambiance reflect the distillery's brand and ethos. They also considered a range of events hosted, the space's commitment to inclusivity, and any unique, innovative, or story-driven elements that set the tasting room apart. The official Top Tasting Rooms graphic is now available for everyone featured on the list to use in your own marketing, websites, and email signatures even. The final list includes 46 tasting rooms, of which we have 3 panelists on the Top Tasting Rooms Roundtable with us. I am so grateful to introduce our moderator for the Top Tasting Rooms Roundtable, Kelly Woodcock. Kelly Woodcock is a spirits industry consultant specializing in pioneering direct-to-consumer strategies. During 13 years at Westward Whiskey, she launched the first U.S. distillery subscription club and the world's first airport craft distillery tasting room. An expert in hospitality operations and brand immersion, Kelly creates innovative consumer paths and revenue. Thank you so much for facilitating this roundtable conversation, Kelly. David Harris from Song Dog Farm Distillery of Boyds, Maryland. Prior to founding Song Dog Spirits in 2015 with his wife, Megan, David spent 20 years in DC-based nonprofit management and advocacy, leading political and other nonprofit organizations. After a decade of hard work and a pivot necessitated by the pandemic, Song Dog Farm Distillery was finally commissioned and opened to the public in 2025. Founded on a deep belief in spirits terroir, Song Dog focuses on the agriculture and flavors of Maryland, with their whiskeys distilled from locally grown heirloom red corn and specialty rye. Thank you for contributing to the Top Tasting Rooms panel and to the magazine, David. Amber Pollock of Backwards Distilling in Casper, Wyoming. Amber is a co-founder of Backwards Distilling Company and has created a unique tasting room vision with a flair for creativity and a strong community focus. Backwards is known for inventive cocktails, Wyoming-sourced ingredients, and a welcoming hospitality. Amber's work blends artistry, education, and local pride, elevating the region's distilling culture through collaboration initiatives and well-balanced cocktails. Welcome, Amber. Xania Woodman of Alpine Distilling of Park City, Utah. Xania V. Woodman, Alpine Distilling's longest-running team member, has helped shape the Alpine story from the bottling line and tasting room to the overseas conferences in the brand's first Main Street tasting room. Xania now oversees all client and in-house events at Alpine's newer, larger tasting room on the historic mining town's High Street, where locals find a welcoming third space for meaningful gatherings, and Park City visitors find a comfortable respite from their vacation activities. Alpine Distilling is a certified gold level green business and is also certified by Safe Bars and Wheel the World. Thank you for joining, Xania. And here is Kelly with the panelists discussing the topic of top tasting rooms.
Hi, everybody. Here we are. Okay, so I think, Xania, you were speaking to how you pick, tasting room events and
understood. Not a problem. So I come from the media world originally. Before I got into all of this entirely by accident, I had been a magazine writer, columnist, freelance writer, magazine editor for 12 years. So I look to my former colleagues in the media, and if something has caught their eye and their attention, and they dedicate their time to write an article about a trend or something that um, is interesting to the consumer, then it's interesting to me. And I then bring that to our co-founder and distiller, Sarah Sargent, and we talk about it. I show her the evidence that, like, this is what is interesting people right now. This falls squarely into our demographic. Let's go after these people. Let's read this article and see what sort of things are attracting their attention. So I kind of make it a group effort and lean on all of that research that was done to create that article about whatever that thing is. That could be the type of cocktails. When tiny teenies was kind of a thing, and people were doing mini cocktails for a moment. There was a brand new book out about tiny cocktails. We fully embrace that and let our creativity go wild with tiny cocktails that you could order as a flight instead of just a flight of our spirits. And we can create events around, I can create an event around anything at this point. But we can, the debut of anything sounds like a good time to me, especially if it involves booze and cocktails and so on. So that's really what we, when we need something new and something fresh, because we'll always have the annual holidays. We can always look a year, 2 years in advance at what holidays are coming, and they're far off. We know the Christmas and the holiday season is coming, so we have plenty of time to work for that. But you never know what shiny thing over here is going to catch people's interest. That's what I want. I want that thing.
All right, David, your turn. Yeah, speak maybe to, your area and being a little bit more of a destination. How do you
Yeah,
do the
we're
same?
yeah, we're evangelists for the importance of the grains that are going in. We're all about local flavor, local terroir. So that's central to our story and our mission. And if you're from here, then it's your flavor. And if you're from somewhere else, we want to show you how good the flavor is here. So for us, it's really a lot about getting people here, regardless of whether they're reading a magazine or in a class that's about how we do what we do, or around the grains or whatever it is. It's about having an immersive experience here, and the being here for us is a big part of it. So, and we built the place and we designed the place around that. That when you're sitting in our tasting room, you have these huge 16-foot windows that you're looking straight forward at the copper, and if you the second you turn around, you're looking back at the fields where there are crops. So we're trying to make sure that you have a sense of being immersed, and actually the two far walls are that shushugiban burnt charcoal wood finish to sort of give you a sense like you're inside of a barrel. Everything we're doing is trying to get people to have a sense that they're in this special place. So especially right now, there's still some novelty associated with that for people in our greater area. And there's a good 1.5 million people right around us. We're trying to still sort of bring people in to have that initial feeling of immersion. And that alone, whether it's for the craft night or it's for the other thing, or it's for the special cocktail rollout, or if it's for Christmas or Winterfest, at least that's, that they're having that experience and those views and getting connected in that way and taking the tour and holding the bottles of grain and understanding that they're at this sort of intersection of the magic of distillation and the beauty of agriculture that's right out the windows.
All right, Hani, I'm going to give you a heads up. I'm starting with you on this next question. I'm curious, we've talked about experiences and what's working in your distillery. Are there tools or systems that you're using that are particularly helpful in creating successful events, whether that's technology platforms or others that just help things run more smoothly as you do these different events?
I'm probably the last person on the AI train. I'm still trying to figure out how to incorporate AI into my world other than just to put together, travel itineraries for me. So I'm relying on some really great, like I said earlier, widgets and platforms, and exploring these platforms that can get us in front of great people who are looking already at the Park City area. We are also a destination. We are 35 minutes up into the mountains outside of a huge metropolitan city. down in the valley, 35 minutes from an airport. So we can be a day trip, we can be a weekend, we can be a week, or you can come stay with us for an entire ski season. So people are coming to us for so many different reasons. That means they're going to find us in so many different ways and different places. So I use a platform called AnyRoad, which is specifically aimed at this panel. It is for us. It is a platform that arranges all the different experiences that we offer, whether they are a one-off or available 10 times every day. On the half hour, maybe that's a tour and tasting. It's really for distilleries and wineries to organize themselves. And I have leaned super heavy into that. So I'll use it for advertising one-off parties, selling tickets to some immersive event that we're doing in the tasting room. We just did a sort of an end of the ski season toast to all of the industry folk who helped us limp through this non-winter that we just had and let them kind of cut loose and party for an evening. So AnyRoad has just become my favorite tool. And I'm currently now exploring other ones such as Local Bird and Batch, which we love our bachelorettes. They are super fun and they bring the woo to the tasting room. Everyone needs a little woo in their tasting room. So, but I'm leaning into those and starting to see what they can do. But if you go on to AnyRoad is not a platform that you would go on searching. It's actually an internal thing that helps me organize myself and face the customer through our website with our best foot forward, showing you all the different things that we have to offer you. Whether you just want to come in for, a seat, we can make you a reservation, all the way up to we can help you to buy a barrel. We would love to sell you a barrel.
All right, David or Amber, do either of you have tools or systems that help with events and your tasting rooms?
We're clearly still not using the power of all of our tools. That's my sense. We have GoTab as a point of sale system, which is actually extremely powerful for especially a big spread out venue where it can be QR driven. It can look just like a Toast point of sale system behind the bar and print out to the back of house or whatever you want. But it can also anyone can walk away and carry their tab with them on their phone as a text and can aim a QR code and say I want to aim their phone at a QR code and say actually, I'd like to add, can I get another drink? And it can be brought to wherever they are because we know where they were based on where they scanned it. So we haven't gotten into the power of that, but I'm hoping that it's going to be a huge help as we move forward in the summer. We have sort of different levels of service. We have an elevated bar service, sort of a covered porch service, and then acres of open grass. And glass is supposed to stay over here, and the aluminum cups and batch cocktails are supposed to stay over there. So we're hopefully going to be able to fully use the power of it. We're using that and Reserve with Rex as a reservation, sort of as a public-facing platform. And it's it's not built for our industry, but it's also infinitely configurable. And we found it. Well, apparently I'm the chief programmer, so I'm trying to hand off that duty any day now. But it's not that hard to set things up relatively quickly. So and that's worked well. So our website, Plan Your Visit, hands them off to collage night, reserve a tasting table, reserve a tour and tasting, whatever you want. So. And the staff have found it reasonably easy to work with.
Right. Amber, what you got?
Probably not a lot to contribute here. We keep it pretty old school, I would say. We don't really have a lot of platforms that we're using at our scale. We used to use kind of like a ticketing software and then ultimately moved to we don't do a lot of ticketed events. We do events, but they're not things that we're really asking people to RSVP to, or we don't take reservations. And so we really have kept it pretty streamlined, pretty straightforward. We do reserve our semi-private space, for bachelorette parties, for instance, and that sort of thing, like Xania mentioned. And we do that by the phone or by an email. And that seems like at our scale, the number of events that we're doing, which is, not every day, but certainly impactful to our business, that seems to be adequate for us to manage at this point. So we really I haven't found a particular program that I'm oh, this really solves a problem that I'm trying to solve. And so, yeah, mostly keep it pretty simple.
I like that. We're getting the vast array of different
Yeah.
ways to solve problems.
Yeah.
David, let's start with you since you're more closely aligned with the destination. I'm curious how each of you look at locals versus visitors. Maybe David, you skew more towards visitors, but how do you service those either the same or differently? And yeah, I would just love to know how you attract those different customers.
Yeah, I keep saying we're a destination, and I think the big surprise to me is that we've built up a tremendous local following, and by local I mean within 8 miles or 10 minutes of us, people who live out here in farm country, and we've also become their corner bar. I didn't really expect that, especially sort of elevated cocktail, bespoke cocktail prices. I That's wonderful. We're absolutely drawing people who are driving 50 or 60 miles, and they've seen us on social media or somewhere else, and they're really making a day of it or an afternoon of it, and they're camping out. We encourage them. You want to bring your own food, that's fine. You can bring a cooler, but no alcohol. You can bring a pop-up tent. Kids can run wild, dog friendly, family friendly. We've leaned into that. So absolutely, people travel and they make a several hour long experience out of it. But on a Wednesday night when it's raining in farm country, the the relative handful of people that we're getting all come within a pretty tight radius. For us, it's about, and our service team is fantastic at this, recognizing who they are and knowing them by name. And it's all the basics of hospitality that, the napkin on the water slides out right underneath them as they step up, and a greeting, and how is so and so, and how's your daughter doing, and those sorts of things. It's all about human connections for us with the local community. But I like to think that we extend the same sort of warm welcome to everybody.
Amber, how about you?
Yeah, at our Casper tasting room, I would say like it's pretty local heavy. I don't have like a I'm sure there's a techie AI platform that could tell me what percentage of folks are, traveling versus here. I have, just my anecdotal evidence, but I would put it at like 75% local, 25% tourists, travelers. Casper is not a destination as much as we love it there. It is pales in comparison to the traffic, that we're on the way to Yellowstone. We're on the way to the Bighorn Mountains. So there are people passing through, and that is business that we do capture and we try to capture. But most people are not coming to stay in Casper for an extended period of time outside of, there's some, conference business and youth sports business and some things like that are bringing people to Casper. But for the most part, we really lean into local folks and people coming back again and again and again. And that's why we do focus on like giving them something new to come back for as often as we can, because Wyoming is a really sparsely populated state. Casper is a large in Wyoming speak, but it's not a major metropolitan area. And so like the folks who are coming, who are in our area, like we have to keep them coming back and give them more reasons to visit many times throughout the year. So we do really lean into local folks and providing them experiences that they can get, right here in our own city. I'll be interested to see what happens in Laramie. We are like right outside of the university here. So I expect a lot of parents like coming in, dropping off, visiting, graduation weekends, et cetera, right near the stadium and Tailgate Park. A lot of people traveling for sports and games. And then right by a conference and convention center, which people like will be traveling in for. So I think the balance may be a little different here. Don't know yet, but I suspect that there could be a little bit more of those like visitors that stop in once and then maybe I don't see them again for a year because they're back to move their kid back in the dorm or whatever the case is, and then they come back to me versus I'll see you next week or next month. So yeah, I expect the flow to be a little bit different here, but it remains to be seen, I think.
Anya?
Park City, it's well, being that we are in Utah, we have a lot of things that are unique about being situated here in a state that both welcomes us, but also can occasionally make doing business, specifically the spirits business, a I'll just say interesting. So Park City is a destination location, a vacation space, a celebration space for a lot of people, but it's also one that a couple times a year empties out completely. So at the end of the day, we're here for the locals. We are located on their high street. We are on Main Street, right in the middle of it, and we have two entrances, so you're going to find us one way or the other, whether you're coming up the street or coming and going from parking. You're going to find us, and we want to be a destination. And also, to David's point, we are a lot of people's neighborhood bar. They want to meet up with friends, and we are a great option. So what we do to cater to that local crowd is we try to be open at some times when a lot of other things will be closed. So that could mean, especially here in Utah, Sundays. So we do have Sunday hours. That alone is huge. The fact that the state liquor stores, because that's how you're going to buy us retail, usually if you don't come to our tasting room, is the fact that we can sell our product on Sunday makes us such a Sunday destination. So we make sure that we also have hours to welcome you inside to sit down, relax, have cocktails and pie. We also usually, not this year, unfortunately, we usually stay open during what we call the mud season. That's when all the snow on the mountains is melting down and you're not really going to go biking or hiking, and you're certainly not skiing. So during the mud season, a lot of businesses on Main Street will close to refresh their own venue. We try very hard to stay open during those times so that the locals do have a place to gather, meet up with their friends, have a cocktail, still have a Friday or a Saturday night, or it's or Tuesday night out on the town. So we're generally open 6 nights a week for them, because the locals, at the end of the day, when the tourists are not coming in May or November, that's who's keeping us going and giving us a reason to come in every day.
Okay, so I'm curious for all three of you, but Amber, I'm really queuing you up to talk about kind of finding that middle space that your space has size-wise. I'm curious, like the happy accidents or the mistakes that you guys have made that people listening today can kind of learn from, things that you discovered as you are trying to figure out how to be successful.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, I do.
All right. I think that so many of the things that we have done that are successful have been happy accidents. It's just been a result of needing to solve a problem or having a constraint or trying a thing and then it working and then deciding to do more of it. There were plenty of things that, were unhappy accidents that we just never did again. And, it's sort of a matter of like evaluating things, being flexible, being willing to try stuff, and then like ditching what's not working. In what Kelly was referencing, we have found a lot of success, particularly just again like bolstering, filling out those sort of slower times, or helping to bring in business on a Thursday night that's like typically a little bit slow for us, or a Sunday that might be a little bit slower, but we are open. Has been some of these like larger parties, and by larger I mean 12 to 25. And so for our space, like in our very first tasting room, we had this weird little side room that we just thought was going to be awkward. It was going to be sort of a disrupt the flow of the space, but just the way the building was built, we had to figure out a thing to do with this room. And so it became this kind of, maybe there were eight to 10 seats in there that were just off and like kind of separated from the rest of the tasting room. And like, my initial thought was like, that's gonna be weird sitting in there. And then almost immediately people were like, how do I sit in there? And I was like, oh, well, you just have to sit in there and I'll put you in there. That's no problem. And then it became like, well, can I reserve to sit in there? Can I bring in a group of 12 to sit in there? And we started reserving off this side space. When we moved to our second tasting room location, it was retrofitted. And so it had this loft space, a little bigger actually. And so we host parties regularly there, about 25 people or so, which seems to be a kind of a gap in our community, where it's like people can find spaces for much larger events and they can find spaces for smaller, more intimate events, but finding a space that can fit 20 to 30 people, and accommodate them doesn't seem to be, there's not a lot of options for it, and particularly what I would consider affordable options, or people would consider to be affordable options. So for me, it's like, if you're going to bring 25 people in on a Sunday when ordinarily I wouldn't have those people, like, just reserve the space. Like, you don't have to pay for it, you're paying for cocktails, right? Like, it has opened up a lot of potential for people who want to do like a low-key get together, a birthday party, whatever, but they're not trying to rent out or like buy out a big fancy thing, just kind of that like more casual event opportunity for people. And so when we built this Laramie tasting room, we planned it specifically. It was the first time that we weren't just like working with what we had. It was a big open space, and we sectioned off the space so that we could create a similar like semi-private opportunity for people to be able to reserve off for similarly sized events. And so I expect to see very similar behavior there, but we've just really, that has been so helpful to us, particularly in filling out those slower times that might be a little sluggish, knowing that we got 20 or 25 people for sure coming in on, a weeknight or a slower time of year. Just lets us know that like, okay, like, we'll keep the lights on. Like, we can pay rent, because that's actually been kind of the goal with like, can I get enough of those events that just like create a baseline for us, and then like, that way we're sure like hard costs are covered, and then everything else, we're able to, if we have a slow night, it's not going to ruin our month.
David, how about you? An accident, happy accident or a mistake that had learning for you?
One happy accident and mistake was we lean heavily into, this isn't the mistake, but we lean very heavily into local food, local agriculture, not just the grain or spirits, but all the food and accompaniments and the goat cheese platter and the veggies and everything. They're all coming from this 93,000 acres in Montgomery County, just outside of Rockville and DC, that 40 years ago, the county was smart enough to put into sort of conservation for agriculture. We get this amazing local goat cheese. And the goat guy was like, "Do you want me to bring a few baby goats over when I drop it off?" I'm like, "Of course, sure, yes, why not?" And that became, and like within one day, we were the place that does goat petting zoo plus farm distillery. And for 30 days after that, 60 days after that, people are like, when are the goats coming back? We need to come when the goats come. Is that a daily thing? Well, we're not a goat farm per se, but we'll talk to them and see what we can do. So it's, in one way, we very quickly sort of did that a couple weeks in a row and defined ourselves as that. But on the other hand, talk about a magnet for families and children. And he sells out of goat cheese. It's delicious. Everybody enjoys themselves. They take care of the lawn right out front, so we don't have to mow right there. That's nice. So,
Oh,
happy
I want to
accident.
come so bad.
Check
All
our
right,
social media
Xania.
so you know when it's coming. It's worth the trip.
Xania, how about you?
Now I got to go get a goat. I think the idea of the tasting room, I adore what a flex space it really can be for the brand. It is such a safe space for throwing things at the wall, seeing what works, what doesn't work, whether intentionally or not. Everything that we do as distilleries can be a pretty big investment. Working with the TTB, putting out new spirits, any new label you add, every little project is actually a big project. I think people think certain aspects, oh, you should do with this or you should do with that. Not everybody understands what that entails, and that you could be years out from launching a new product if it needs to be rested many years out from launching a new product. So the tasting room, the concept, which I guess is why we're doing this entire thing today, the tasting room is just so important to the business, I feel, as being a place where you can do something once, see if it sticks, bring it back again, or just say, well, that was interesting, and kind of wash your hands of that and never go back there again. I guess our happiest accident was that pre-pandemic, we had a much smaller space, and we wanted to incorporate some food, but we're surrounded by restaurants on Main Street. So we didn't want to have anything that everybody else already had. And the one thing that you couldn't find on Main Street was a cocktail and just a dessert. So we kind of midstream relaunched as a pie bar pre-pandemic, when we went to move into this big new gallery space with its very austere white and gray walls and its industrial ceiling, the intention was not to bring necessarily the pie with us over to that. That was then, this was now. We were in this fancy grown up new space. And the first people through the door said, "Where's the pie?" So we kind of had to start squirreling away kitchen implements and rebuilding the pie program because the people demanded it. So we didn't realize that that was going to be, I mean, it's not as popular as baby goats, but it was in high demand, and people do still, at the local restaurants, they'll hold off on ordering their dessert and come join us specifically for their dessert course with their espresso martini, and we just adore that. So we'll keep that going as long as they keep asking for our pie.
I love a pie accident. That's fantastic. Okay,
a
everybody
pie accident.
listening, feel free to pop questions in the Q&A section if we're happy to answer any questions that are top of your mind. But while we wait for those, I'd love to talk to you guys about how you engage your team and train your team. You've got these concepts for your brand, you've got events that you want executed, but how do you ensure that your front of house staff is executing in a way that, you know, is on par with what you're hoping to accomplish with your customers? Xania, why don't we start with you, since you're already the big person on my screen.
Fabulous. Because I started as one of our bottlers and then sort of worked my way through many different positions within the company. I think that helped me along the way. So we try to do something similar with a lot of our staff. If they're with us, you know, long enough for the season and they have the time, we invite them to come bottle. We want them to come into the distillery, put their hands on the product, come dump a barrel, feel what that feels like, smell what that smells like. And that had such a profound impact on me as far as knowing this brand and its ethos from the inside out. We want to offer that to every single staff. Yes, you may be coming in just for a winter. You're really here to ski, trying to make a little scratch while you're here to pay for your skiing habit. And you're going to maybe be a host at the door, but we want you at the door. You're the first person someone's going to meet. So it is wonderful if we can get you onto the bottling line, putting labels on the bottles, packing the boxes and sending them off. It really changes your perspective, and it changes the them into a we. When people ask questions, I've noticed that the staff responses change from they, meaning the founders, the owners, to we, because now they feel like they actually are a part of the brand. And I hope that we will keep that going and always make that experience available to every single person who comes to spend time with us, whether they're with us for 10 years like I am, or just 3 or 4 months winter season. We really want them to feel like they had that ground up experience.
Okay, Amber, before you answer maybe the same question, we got a question asking how you enforce a minimum, or if you enforce a minimum with those 20 to 30 person reservations. This person's got quite a small tasting room, and they've noticed that folks at times take advantage, perhaps end up purchasing very, very little. So how do you make sure that those groups are paying off like you want?
Yeah, that is tricky. In our space where we're not doing kind of like a full buyout, I think there's like a little bit less risk, and for the most part, it has worked out. But there have been times, and there have been circumstances where I have required a minimum, and I'll try to do like a split, you know, or like I'll say it's X number of dollars that gets applied to your bar tab, like for the space, it gets applied to your bar tab or whatever, to still keep it affordable. Where it's like if you buy $500 worth of cocktails, the space is free. But if you buy $50 worth of cocktails, then like I can't, you know, I've already staffed and, you know, all that sort of thing. And so I do think like I've tried a few different structures, and that has been one that has worked pretty well, where it's like there is a cocktail minimum spend. in lieu of a rental fee or some sort of kind of hybrid split. But yeah, I would say I tend to not do full buyouts just for that. One, I don't like to have it be where like somebody comes to the door, they're passing through. I've had people like reroute their whole trip, and they're like passing through and they didn't check the website and they didn't check socials, but they, made a point to get here and they come and it's like, oh, you can't come in. So I try to leave, space for walk-ins where I can. With a smaller tasting room like that, I think that can be tricky, and it may just be more advantageous to do some of those buyouts. But in that circumstance, I would enforce a cocktail minimum just because you have costs that go into being able to host them. So I would do it.
All right, we've got one more question coming in. David, maybe I'll start with you on this, but if Amber or Xania have thoughts, let me know. Basically, the question is like, we're in a new era economically with our industry, and I guess things have evolved, and so just traditional return on investment considerations are starting to change. So when we're looking at what products we sell in the tasting room, what merchandise we put in there, how we utilize the space, are there anything, given what's happening in the industry, that like, has your thought process changed? Has your metrics changed? Is there anything, I know David, you're new, but is there anything that you're using to kind of figure out how to make those choices?
I think what we're prioritizing and how we've laid things out and the choices that we're making in the tasting room, I don't think that they've changed that much. We may be lucky, but I'm aware of the trends. I get all the industry horrific news, which I try to only read the headlines. Otherwise, I wouldn't come into work. But I mean, I think the DC region, the DC, Maryland, Virginia region is kind of a resilient drinking region. DC itself is a company town and people need to blow off steam. And I think we're also in a relatively underserved area for what we're doing, not just for a farm, but for craft spirits. So if we were on a main street that had 13 distilleries within 2 blocks of us, I know we would be thinking different. But our core message of evangelizing about the flavor of this place and showing people through tasting how this terroir and the air and the yeast and everything is affecting what we're making right here, that's still 6 months in, relatively fresh. And we're in a populous region that's relatively underserved. So, I mean, our core product selection and the core SKUs that we're trying to sell are not a surprise to anyone. It's bourbon and rye and gin and vodka and a couple liqueurs. That's our model hasn't, I think, changed meaningfully. One decision that we made early on was to make our production facility kosher. We did that just for ourselves, not thinking at all about market position, just for ourselves. And it turns out that, of course, I know there's a sizable Jewish community out there. I'm a member of it, but I didn't think that those people would really care because if you know somebody who's observant and Jewish, they're not necessarily looking for a mark on it because it's vodka and because some of these spirits are inherently kosher, basically. But they want to be out there supporting us. Having said that, we make every modifier for our bar based on our permit. So any elderflower, any liqueur, anything we have to make in-house. Our permit is such that we can't go buy alcohol anywhere. We have to make everything here. So having said that, we suddenly have a back bar of 15 Amaros, liqueurs. I don't know that there is a kosher craft vermouth in America. So the one thing that I think we're going to shift on is to lean into that through direct to consumer and through shipping and things like that. There's definitely an audience out there that we did not anticipate necessarily marketing to that does seem to care.
Amber or Xania, do you have anything to speak to the change in the market piece of it?
I get that doesn't work for everybody to retroactively make things kosher. I get that's not necessarily a great fix.
Well, David, we actually made the same choice. So, but that kind of plays into my answer, which is in a crowded market and with people's spend maybe shrinking, not necessarily cutting in half, but if you're driving here, that was a big investment. If you're flying here, that's a big investment. So we obviously want to honor everyone's investment, coming to Park City. It's not a cheap, town to come visit and play. So we want to give you every reason to choose us. There is somewhere else that you could choose that happens to be, owned by a big corporation and, has big investors. So we're, the littler guy. We want you to choose us. So we're going to give you every reason to hopefully choose us. We're going to be a sustainable business. We are going to be OU kosher. We are, we have a female-led management team and female-owned and female-directed. We are an LGBTQ safe space. We are Safe Bars certified. We want to give you every reason to say, well, that is special. And that's where I want to put my money, my attention, my time, whatever it is you have to spend with us. Maybe you have more time than you have money. Great. We'll take your time. We'll take your presence. Come lend that to us. So choose us is what we can do. And then also just staying the course and being consistent, because in the distilling industry, as everyone here knows, decisions don't happen on, you can't really turn on your heels. If you want to change the look of one of your bottles, you're looking 2 years out at glass prices. You're looking at stoppers and corks and huge tankers of things making their way around the world to you, which is an even more expensive prospect right now. So consistency in our message and our product while we look way further out, hopefully beyond the economic issues that are happening right now, and making good decisions for tomorrow and next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and believing also that your brand will be there to see that day.
Amber, anything you're doing differently in this post world?
Yeah, I would say the only thing that I would add is that I think for us, it's the hospitality element of this has gotten even more important than it ever was. We always cared a lot about service and about how people felt when they came in the tasting room, about how our employees felt when they were in the space and working. And we have broken that sort of interaction down into even like finer parts where it's like, okay, how can we really set ourselves apart? Not just like, what our baseline is, which I expect that, people are going to rave about our staff, but like, how can we break it down even more to like give people hospitality that I think has degraded sort of in a lot of, as the economic situation has changed. I also think like people's experience going out, costs have gone up, experience has gone down, service has gone down, quality in a lot of realms has gone down. And so I think like really trying to like be meticulous about some of the elements of hospitality that we're trying to provide and break those steps of service and like those moments of service and hospitality down even further than we ever have before, to give specific training and intention to other moments in that process that used to kind of gloss over, like the moment of reorder, for instance, like when you're deciding, am I staying for another or am I leaving? Like that was a thing that I used to train staff to be like, yeah, go ask them if they want another or if they're, and now I'm like putting a lot of attention and thought into like, how do we make it easy for them? How do we curate an experience in that moment for them that gives them an easy yes to say like, yeah, I'll have another one, And so I think we've had to get really specific about hospitality in our space in a way that we haven't before.
I agree so much with that. Okay, I'm going to ask each of you to give the community here one piece of advice, either for someone that's starting a new tasting room and trying to figure out what to do, or someone that wants to improve their tasting room, just kind of like a practical piece of advice people can implement. I'm going to give you a second to think about that and just say that I appreciate everybody hanging in there. I believe there were quite a bit of technical difficulties. So thank you, everybody, for sticking around and for submitting your questions. All right, David, let's start with you. What's a good tip?
If you think you're going to be making food or preparing food in any way, you've probably underestimated the space that you need, and you just need more space. And I thought it was enough because I could fall down and not hit my head on that thing over there, but it turns out that's not enough for what we're trying to do, and it's going to be a constant choke point for us. And there's, we built the place from the ground up, so we have, everything's value engineering, so that's what happened. But we have no one to blame but ourselves. So allow yourself, and we work with so many professionals, and I guess that's the other half of the piece of advice is that it will always be a process and a moving target from your design to when you occupy it. We talked to so many people over the course of years about how the space would look and what the layout would be. And we worked with so many thoughtful people as we did it, including ourselves. And then the first day we stood in it, we all said, why didn't we, this isn't, huh. And how long did we stare at these plans? So give yourself a little grace and recognize the other half of the first part of the advice is give yourself a little grace and recognize that as you stand in that space, it's going to feel and seem different, and your theory of service may need to shift to accommodate it. It's a process. It's an ongoing process.
Xania, over to you.
I would say, don't be scared to crow about what makes you different. It is loud out there. There is, and I'm not just talking about, the distilling space and how many brands there are. People have so many choices about where to spend their time and their money, as I was kind of referencing. So you really do need to get your message out. Invest in those platforms or in a person whose sole focus is on getting your message out. I think, traditional media is, wonderful. There are still people who pick up those weekly magazines. I used to work for one. Those glossy weekly city mags really do get your message out. But then try out some of the newfangled stuff. A lot of the platforms, for example, Eventective, if you do want to get more events like corporate, that's kind of like a corporate version of the Knot. If you want that business in your space or have a space that's perfect for that, they'll work with you. They live and die by how many different spaces they can offer. So don't be afraid to ask for a 3-month, 4-month, or 6-month deal. You can negotiate. You have something that they want, and you can ask for a bit of a discount and that sort of thing. But whatever you do, get the word out about what your offerings are. Some places, if you build it, they will come. Great, wonderful, that's fabulous. I think for those of us, here on this panel today, we have to work harder. We're all facing either a geographic difference or a distance. Maybe your tasting room is not connected to a distillery, or maybe it is connected to a distillery, and that poses its own differences. I'm in a control state. We all have a unique difference that's going to pose some sort of challenge. So focusing on getting the word out about all the things that you are, everything that you offer, and all those little minute things that make you different from maybe the place across town, across the field, or just across the street or next door.
Thank you. All right, Amber, what's your advice?
So this may sound sort of basic, but it is the thing that we started doing that I think helped us turn the corner and actually start to see year over year growth in what we were doing. And it is kind of getting back to basics, but it was just a real analysis of where are we winning and what is working, and can I do that 6, 7, 8, 10, 25, 40 times more a year than what I'm already doing it now? What is that thing? What are people liking about it? And how do I add more of that into what I'm doing? So, sounds obvious, but it was some real kind of introspection about okay, people come to this thing because why? What is the reason that people are getting drawn in for that thing? And is there a different version of it? Rather than doing it again, every month, is there a different version of it? I'll go back to our pop-ups. That was the tropical pop-up. It was the only pop-up we did for years and years. And it's how do we capture that? Is it lightning in a bottle, or can we reproduce it? Can we recreate that? Can we reskin it and put it in a different part of the year and retheme it and, create a similar experience, but and that serves sort of the same function to guests who are coming in, and the same draw, but is novel and is new. And so it was a conversation about do more of what is working and fill the calendar with those things. And yeah, again, it's obvious, but also wasn't totally obvious. I mean, we went years and years of trying new things and not kind of being a little more thoughtful and strategic about what's the essence of this? Why is it working? And how do we do more of that as much as we can,
All right. Well, Amber, that was a great piece of advice to end on. And David and Xania as well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you guys sharing all of your tips and secrets on how to.
Also, make sure that the Hobart dishwasher installer knows which way is forward and backwards. Don't assume, because it says Hobart on their shirt, don't assume they know which side is the front of the machine.
Sounds like very specific advice, and I like
That's
specific.
in case anyone has a dishwasher.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for your time. Take the tips and implement dishwasher going forward.